In her past life, Jill was unfortunate enough to marry a deceitful man. This life, Reborn, she directly confronts the scoundrel and his deceitful accomplice, ascending to the peak of her life. Jill returns from the military, only to be betrayed by her fiancé she trusted deeply. After being wrongfully imprisoned, her treacherous fiancé decides to kill her to silence her. Jill boldly escapes from prison, but is struck down by a magical weapon just before she can leave. It seems that even the heavens couldn't bear to watch her suffering and gave Jill a chance to start over. She finds herself back 6 years ago, on the day of her traitorous fiancé Dia's birthday party, which is also when she was publicly proposed to. By the time Jill realizes what's happening, she's already at the party. The moment she locks eyes with Dia, she immediately flees, refusing to be publicly proposed to by that scoundrel in this life. In her past life, Jill was indeed moved by the proposal, but years later, after returning from the battlefield, she accidentally discovers Dia in a compromising situation with her own sister, Phyllis. That day, her engagement is broken, and she is imprisoned under the accusation of poisoning the princess, facing execution the next day to preserve the royal family's honor. This is why Jill escapes from prison, only to be killed by a magical weapon in the end. For reasons unknown, Jill is back 6 years ago. Her deceased parents are still alive. The moment she and Dia met in her past life, he proposed immediately, and she was momentarily charmed by his appearance. This time, she chooses to flee immediately. However, Dia persists and follows her with a blue rose. Jill makes up an excuse to dismiss him, knowing he wants to use her as a shield and won't give up easily. She must find a reason for the royal family to willingly let her go. As Dia approaches with the rose, Jill grabs the coat of a man seated behind her and declares her love at first sight, refusing to marry anyone else. To her surprise, the man behind her agrees to the proposal. When Jill hears his familiar voice, she realizes it's her arch-enemy from her past life, Hades, the imperial ruler who once plunged her country into crisis. Now, before being known as the cursed monarch, Hades praises Jill's choice. Shocked, Jill faints on the spot. The next day, when Jill wakes up, Hades comes to her asking for another proposal to confirm he's not dreaming. Jill finds his personality completely different from her past life. She had seen Hades destroy cities, seemingly targeting her mother. To protect the innocent, Jill, then revered as a war deity, begrudgingly surrendered to save civilian lives. Hades, for reasons unknown, really did withdraw his troops. Now, Hades, completely unlike his past maniacal self, kneels to put shoes on her, seeming like a puppy eager for praise. At this moment, Dia confronts Jill, questioning why she didn't obey him and claiming their marriage was already arranged by the royal family. Surprised, Jill, now Hades' fiancée, watches as Dia is left speechless by Hades' mere presence, calling him a monster as he fails to stop them. Hades told Jill that Dia would not give up easily and mentioned that love always comes with challenges. Jill had a bad feeling, and the next second, Hades teleported them out of the palace and directly onto his returning ship. He comforted her, saying they would reach his empire soon and had even prepared new clothes for her. Jill felt things were moving too quickly. It wasn't until Hades fed her cake that she realized and asked him how he viewed their engagement, like their age difference. Hades thought the age gap was ideal and praised Jill's high magical abilities and her proactive proposal, believing she was his ideal match. Jill sensed something was off and confessed she had her reasons for proposing to Hades out of necessity. Hades seemed deeply hurt and summoned his familiar, Ravi, who teased Hades for being love-struck. Jill then learned that this white dragon, Ravi, was the legendary dragon god. The kingdom and the empire each had different guardian deities. Jill's kingdom was protected by Kratos, the goddess of love and earth, while the Sky King, dragon god Ravi, guarded the empire. Most citizens in the kingdom were born with magic, unlike the empire, where few people had magic, but housed the unique dragon race. These were just myths Jill had heard, never expecting to meet a dragon god. Ravi thought Jill, with her magic and ability to see him, was a perfect match for Hades. Hades didn't see age as an issue, noting his own parents had a significant age difference, and he, being a romantic novel enthusiast, found it ideal. Jill felt his appearance and personality didn't match. Learning the proposal was fake, Hades was somewhat hurt, but still grateful that Jill promised to make him happy for life. Feeling guilty for using the engagement to escape Dia and deceiving Hades, Jill decided to fulfill her promise, not wanting to be like Dia. Unexpectedly, Ravi was surprised when Jill truly accepted. Jill confirmed the proposal was real, but stated she was too young to marry immediately. Hades was satisfied and offered Jill a kiss on the hand, calling her his amethyst. Following Hades' wishes, Ravi gave Jill a marriage ring witnessed by the dragon god. Hades declared that, with this ring, Jill was the wife he would protect for life. However, their ship was then attacked. As Hades teleported Jill to the deck, he suddenly collapsed, leaving Ravi to take Jill to safety, questioning if his protection had ended too soon. However, Jill was a war deity in her past life and had vowed to make Hades happy for life. She activated her magic, hurling the ship they were on toward the harbor and shattering an incoming cannonball with a punch, questioning how she had fared so poorly in her previous life given her abilities. Jill arrived at the port with the ship and immediately informed the guards that Hades was unwell and needed medical attention. No one in the Empire could see the dragon god Ravi. Jill recognized the port, and at that moment, a blonde young girl rushed over, insisting on seeing Hades. Ravi, enjoying the drama, told Jill that the girl was Sophia, the local lord's daughter, and also a backup fiancée for Hades. Sophia, seeing Jill as a rival and suspecting Hades of pedophilia due to Jill's young age, tearfully called Jill a homewrecker and vowed not to lose to her before running off. Jill had heard of Sophia in her previous life. After Jill accepted Dia's proposal, Hades returned to the Empire and rejected Sophia's engagement at a banquet, leading Sophia to a breakdown where she killed other fiancé candidates and set the castle on fire, ending her own life. However, Jill felt Sophia was not that extreme and hoped to prevent some past events, including the deaths of her family and comrades. Upon waking, Hades searched everywhere for Jill, unable to believe she had proposed to him. Delighted, he personally made desserts, claiming that winning a woman's heart starts with her stomach. Jill couldn't resist the desserts, but noticed that Hades had sneaked out of the castle. It seemed the local lord had motives against the emperor. Hades scoffed at the audacity of someone daring to target the cursed emperor. Jill, curious, asked if the curse on Hades was real. Hades hesitated, afraid his strong feelings for Jill were showing. Nevertheless, Hades revealed the truth. His mother was a concubine, making him the last in line for succession. Only one of him and his brother could stay in the capital. Seen as delusional for talking to Ravi, Hades was subtly abandoned by his mother and sent to the frontier. At 11, his half-brother, the crown prince, suddenly died. Despite many sons of the emperor, the next 5 heirs also died on Hades' birthday each year, leading people to believe he was a monster. Only his brother Weisel was willing to communicate with him, though Weisel, being a low-ranking prince, couldn't help much. This string of eerie deaths continued for 5 years until the emperor, frightened, recalled Hades and abdicated. However, his mother committed suicide publicly on the day Hades ascended to the throne, contributing to the legend of the cursed emperor. Ravi clarified that it was not responsible for the mysterious deaths. Even without its intervention, Hades was destined to become the emperor. Hades comforted Jill, mentioning that now with his brother Weasel by his side, the empire was relatively stable. However, Jill remembered that in her previous life, it was Weasel who leaked Hades' information to the kingdom, leading to the execution of all his brothers. Jill wondered if Hades didn't find it unfair. Hades believes he is the reincarnation of the dragon god, born with the mission to become the emperor. He feels his family and the nation have been unfair to him, yet they are the ones he must protect. Denying this would mean admitting defeat by fate, so Hades refuses to give up. Most importantly, with Jill as his new bride, he believes the curse can be calmed, though it seems there are only 3 years left. Jill senses he is hiding something but chooses not to probe, instead asking Hades what the next steps are. Hades plans to confirm whether the local lord intends to rebel. Jill advises him to stay in the castle while she gathers intelligence. Hades worries about her safety, but Jill asserts that a wife cannot ignore her husband's troubles, which deeply moves Hades. He promises to prepare many desserts for her at home. Reborn Jill finds that Hades seems like a younger brother who acts spoiled. Jill discreetly changes her outfit and slips out of the castle, accidentally encountering Sophia praying to a priest. She learns Sophia is the child of the Lord's former wife and that Hades is rumored to prefer girls under 14. Sophia was rejected because she turned 16. Jill is speechless and plans to leave to gather more information elsewhere, but sees a group of men dressed as guards kidnapping Sophia. Initially unwilling to intervene, Jill decides Sophia shouldn't be treated this way and steps in. It turns out the local lord orchestrated everything, indeed planning a rebellion and framing Jill for kidnapping Sophia, claiming she is a spy, and accusing Emperor Hades of treason for bringing a spy into their midst. He aims to use this opportunity to drive the Empire's forces from the port and rule it himself as a land emperor. Jill, pretending to be an innocent boy passing by, gets captured along with Sophia. She learns the kidnappers are posing as agents from the kingdom, planning to deflect blame onto her. Sophia's visit to the priest was suggested by her father, and despite her strong belief in Hades, she is unaware of the true nature of her conversations with the forest dragons near her countryside villa, using them merely as a sounding board. Locals consider her a monster, but after Hades ascended to the throne and learned she could communicate with dragons, he summoned Sophia. However, she could not see Ravi, Hades' companion, and was scolded by her father upon returning, though Hades defended her. Sophia sees Hades as a benefactor and confessed her feelings to him, but was rejected for being 16, which she initially thought was an excuse until Hades actually brought a young girl, Jill, back with him. As Jill contemplates how to resolve the situation, the soldiers bring in 2 more captives. Jill realizes they are her former deputies from her past life. Seeing these familiar faces, Jill tears up, grateful that in this timeline, these cherished people have not yet disappeared. In her past life, Camilla and Zig, also from the Empire, were saddened when discussing their past. In this life, they are still arguing in front of Jill. Jill effortlessly breaks her handcuffs, causing the 2 to tremble in fear. She silently removes their handcuffs, wipes away her tears, and tells them to think about how to break the situation. Camilla and Zig are part of the Empire's Northern Legion, previously stationed at the port. The local lord blamed the disturbance on Jill, claiming the Northern Legion not only failed to control the unrest, but had sided with Jill. When the lord's private army quelled the chaos, the Northern Legion was deemed useless and scheduled for withdrawal. If the lord's daughter Sophia were to accidentally die during the unrest, it would tarnish Emperor Hades' reputation, as the disturbance was allegedly caused by his fiancée from the kingdom. Another teammate, Mahali, spoke up, stating that Hades' fiancée was not in the room, and the kidnappers were also looking for Jill. Thus it was clear that Jill was not the real instigator, and the Lord stood to gain the most. If the Northern Legion was deemed useless, civilians like Camilla would have to flee the Empire or face execution. Sophia stepped forward, vowing to tell Hades the truth as she believed he was reasonable. However, she didn't want others to face danger, so she decided to stay behind to buy time for Camilla and the others to escape. Jill remembered that in her previous life, Camilla and others fled to the kingdom, and Sophia's madness at the banquet likely reflected a similar choice, sacrificing herself to save others. Jill did not want to see such an outcome repeated, so she revealed her identity and explained that the enemy did not know her exact location, which they could use to rescue Sophia and clear the Northern Legion's name while exposing the one framing her. Jill emphasized that Sophia was crucial as a witness. Sophia, thinking of Jill as a romantic rival, didn't understand why Jill would save her. Jill admitted she wasn't in love with Hades. Their marriage was mutually beneficial, but she promised to make Hades happy. Her sole purpose in saving Sophia was to have her testify against her father, the Lord. Meanwhile, Hades considered resorting to drastic measures, initially planning to use the Lord as bait to uncover the real mastermind behind the port's control. However, if the Lord harmed Jill, he was prepared to purge the port and make it a direct territory. Without her father, Sophia's family would collapse, and perhaps dying there would be her happiest outcome. Jill disclosed her relationship with Hades to Sophia, gaining her trust and securing her commitment to expose her father. Camilla and Zig marveled at Jill's natural leadership. Jill planned to break out, free the controlled Northern Legion, and restore their status as a competent force. She instructed everyone to step back, then punch through a stone wall. Amazed, Camilla watched as Jill, once known in the army as the Demon Captain, smiled, and hoped they wouldn't let her down. Following, Jill led her team into the church where the Northern Legion was detained. With just 2 punches, she knocked down the rebels and freed the taken-aback Northern Legion. Waving the Emperor's banner and using her presence and rhetoric, she swiftly won over the hearts of the Legion. For those who resisted, she had plenty of strength and means to handle them. Ravi, who witnessed this, was astonished and later told Hades that he was fortunate to have such a wife, joking that Hades could now comfortably rely on her. While Hades was preparing soup for Jill, he was also calculating the cost of rebuilding the port, planning to heavily fine the Lord to cover the expenses. Ravi felt spending money was trivial since this would save Sophia, the Northern Legion, and even the Lord's family, preventing Hades from becoming a despised dictator. Hades felt a bit embarrassed by this. Meanwhile, Jill, fighting outside, managed to lure out the enemy commander. The enemy surrounded the church housing the Northern Legion and demanded Jill be handed over for their withdrawal. Camilla and Zig, seeing Jill as just a child, were reluctant to let her face the danger alone. However, Jill insisted she never engaged in risky actions and had Mahali bind her as a hostage. Jill was soon brought before the enemy commander, who raised his axe to strike her, only to find her strength terrifying. She shattered his axe with a punch and sent his soldiers flying with a slap. Their boats for retreat were destroyed by Jill, and Zig captured the priest who was plotting to kill Sophia. The enemy commander, seeing no escape, pleaded with Jill to release his soldiers, promising to confess everything to the Emperor. Just then, the Lord arrived with his troops, intending to eliminate all present, including the Northern Legion and the rebels, so he could still claim victory. However, the dragon summoned by the Lord hesitated to attack Jill because Emperor Hades, known as the Dragon Emperor, had arrived. The Lord still refused to give up, attempting to use Jill's reputation as leverage against Hades. He proposed that if Hades returned to the palace and awaited the outcome, he would declare that Jill had been deceived by the enemy and blame the rebellion on the Northern Legion. Unexpectedly, Hades quickly won over the rebels who initially occupied the port, as Jill wanted to save everyone. However, Hades had less patience for prolonging the conflict. Seeing this, the enemy commander, Hugo, immediately switched allegiance to Hades, declaring that the Lord was the true mastermind behind the rebellion. The Lord tried to defend himself, but was intimidated by Hades' dragon-like presence. Sophia stepped forward, and Hades, with a cold sneer, stepped on the Lord's head. He pointed out that a man willing to sacrifice his former wife and daughter for his own reputation clearly didn't care about Sophia. However, it seemed the Lord now valued his current wife and daughter. The Lord then pleaded for mercy, prompting Hades to reclaim the port and the castle. Seeing the situation was irreversible, the Lord loudly taunted Hades, calling him a cursed emperor whose mother had committed suicide upon his ascension. He argued that even if Hades showed mercy now, no one would want him as their ruler, and claimed Hades' hands were stained with blood. Jill was ready to retaliate, but Hades responded that he didn't need anyone's approval to be emperor, and tasked Camilla with interrogating Sophia. That night, Jill got lost in the castle. Ravi chatted with her, mentioning that Hades was trying hard not to resort to terror as a governing tool. Jill felt sad because no one, regardless of their destiny to be an emperor, should be feared and blamed. Hades wanted to break the curse and be loved, but Jill believed this wasn't the right way. Ravi argued that if they didn't calm Hades, who is the reincarnation of the dragon god, his disappointment in the world could have disastrous consequences. Ravi then led Jill to the bedroom where a drunken Hades was. Reluctantly, Jill and Ravi took care of him. When Hades woke up mumbling about wanting an apple, Jill struggled with peeling it using a knife, as she was only skilled in using it for combat. Hades got up and showed her how, even peeling an apple into a rabbit shape, something he learned to make others less afraid of him. Touched, Jill fed him the apple, commenting on how he resembled a cute younger brother. Jill's own family had many siblings, and their family motto emphasized strength above all. Jill appreciated that Hades didn't execute the rebels on the spot because she despised terror and bloodshed. However, she insisted that this didn't mean Hades should tolerate the Lord's taunts. She didn't care about any curse. She wanted Hades to live. So, Jill told Hades that if anyone spoke to him like the Lord did, he should counter that Jill wants him alive. Hades blushed and stammered that Jill must like him, to which she replied, of course, they were already family. Hades, feeling cold and lonely, lured Jill into warming his bed, musing if he liked her, it might bring her misfortune. As Jill drifted off to sleep, Hades felt both joy and sorrow. He cherished the feeling of being loved, so he kept making tasty dishes for Jill. Camilla and Zig, recognized for their bravery, were appointed as knights serving close to Jill. They were optimistic about Jill and Hades' relationship and pledged their firm support. However, Jill saw her relationship with Hades as one of mutual benefit and worried that developing real feelings could complicate their straightforward dynamic. Camilla and Zig looked at the ring on Jill's hand, believing it would lift all curses from Hades. Jill was curious about the origin of the curse. They told her that if the myth was true, the curse on the Dragon Emperor likely came from the goddess of the kingdom where Jill was from. The kingdom's legend says the goddess and the dragon god had a fallout over human issues, leading to the continent splitting into two nations. On the Empire's side, the myth was that the dragon god and the goddess almost married, but their disagreement led to a split, and the Empire's land was cursed by the goddess. Later, the Dragon Emperor married a powerful dragon queen, who established a barrier in the Empire that countered the goddess's curse. Just then, Sophia, now Jill's student, rushed in with a letter from the neighboring kingdom's Dauphin, Dia, requesting Jill's return. Not him again? Hades, seeing the letter, angrily prepared for a confrontation. Dia's visit was to confirm if Jill had become the Dragon Queen, and he brought the magical weapon that had killed Jill in her past life. Thinking of Dia made Jill feel sick, while Dia firmly believed Jill had been kidnapped. Sophia suggested Jill act happily, which might discourage Dia. Hades was delighted to see Jill in a dress and even planned to style her hair, telling her to just smile during their meeting. However, the thought of Dia soured Jill's expression, and she vowed to protect Hades, causing him to blush and faint. Before meeting Dia again, Hades felt jealous because Jill seemed more focused on how to assassinate Dia than on him. Don't be jealous over everything. However, they needed to act like a sweet couple, and Hades' jealousy was palpable. To appease him, Jill promised to fully cooperate with Hades' plan to display affection, which led Hades to sweep her off her feet. Camilla and Zig, watching from behind, thought this seemed almost like pedophilia and that they should intervene. Hades also received a slap from Jill. With a slap mark, Hades cheerfully met Dia, explaining that Jill had slapped him out of fear he would send her back, and he was indulgent of his wife's actions. While Hades and Jill were showing affection, Dia insisted on taking Jill back to be a queen, claiming Hades married her to break his tyrant's curse. Dia knew about the Lord's rebellion and thought that if Jill couldn't break Hades' curse, she should obediently return with him. Since Hades hadn't killed the Lord, it seemed to the public that the curse was broken, but Dia planned to secretly kill the Lord, proving the curse was still active. Why endure him? They thought. If you call me a tyrant, then I'll act like one. Hades could just seize Dia and deal with him instantly. The Lord was rumored to have hanged himself in prison, and rumors had already spread that a tyrant's rule would curse the common people. The prime suspect seemed to be Dia, who had smeared Jill in her past life this way. Camilla informed Jill that the curse of the goddess and the shield had a continuation. When the goddess realized that her curse was ineffective, she was furious and knew she couldn't appear in her true form due to the shield's rejection. Therefore, she transformed herself into a black gun, which has been passed down through generations in the kingdom's royal family, and was the weapon that killed Jill in her past life. The Empire also possessed a weapon of the dragon god, the Sky Sword, but it had disappeared centuries ago. It is said that the gun crossed the sea and killed the first Dragon Queen. When the Dragon Queen realized that the black gun was the goddess, she sacrificed her life using the Sky Sword to seal the black gun. As a result, the shield vanished, the goddess was severely injured, and the curse could no longer continue, restoring normalcy to the land. Although just a myth, the curse affecting Hades now seemed similar, but Jill always suspected that the curse on Hades was a deliberate setup. Just then, Sophia, holding the black gun, burst in, claiming to be the only legitimate wife of the Dragon Emperor, and prepared to kill Jill. Hades arrived quickly, summoning the Sky Sword to strike Sophia, but Jill intervened, saying Sophia was possessed. As the black gun was about to stab Jill, Hades grabbed it, and the black mud possessing Sophia clung to him, claiming it was the only one who loved Hades, and he only needed to look at it. Jill crushed the black mud on the spot. However, Hades ordered Sophia's execution. Jill disagreed with anything of the sort. Hades then directed Zig and Camilla to gather all women over 14, claiming the dirty entity could possess them. Those who refused to come for inspection would be executed immediately. Jill strongly disagreed, as this would only deepen the curse on Hades. Nonetheless, Hades insisted on destroying the goddess's vessel. Jill finally understood why Hades appeared to favor young girls. Women over 14 could potentially become vessels for the goddess. Faced with the possible revival of the goddess, Hades reacted frantically. After returning, Jill was furious, not expecting the myth to be true. The dragon god and the goddess were meant to be spouses, and now she found herself caught in the middle as the dragon queen, with Hades claiming she didn't love him. Reflecting on Hades and Dia, Jill felt unlucky to have encountered both. But compared to Dia, who was entirely despicable, Hades was somewhat endearing since he indeed saved her from the goddess. Jill was about to seek out Hades, but found him already at the door. Ravi urged Hades to apologize quickly. Hades felt he hadn't done anything wrong but was afraid of being disliked by Jill. Jill, seeing he hadn't tended to his wounds, found his gentleness strange. Hades yearned for love yet had never opened his heart, as he had never even called her by her name. Just then, a group of soldiers rushed in, reporting a fire in town and waiting for his decision. Hades killed these soldiers, townspeople who believed he was abducting all the women to kill them. Deciding to embrace the tyrant label, Hades protected Jill with a barrier before leaving, which, to Jill, felt like being trapped. Jill had suspected the Lord was not dead and had warned Camilla and others beforehand that the town might catch fire. She believed this was likely the work of the Lord and a mastermind behind the scenes, probably Dia. After setting the fire and inciting the townspeople, they were now preparing to leave the port by boat. Camilla and her team planned to capture the Lord and bring him back, proving that the news of his death was false, which could clear Hades of the curse. At this time, Jill was preparing to help. Ravi told her about the Dragon Queen's magical shield. The black gun was just a part of the goddess, and the cursed goddess couldn't use her full power. Therefore, she would revive through girls over 14 and manipulate other 14-year-old girls. Jill was the shield protecting Hades from the goddess's twisted love. It turned out the goddess was a goddess of love who would do anything for her loved one. Her goal was to marry the Dragon Emperor. Jill joked that Ravi and the gun should just marry, but Ravi explained that the goddess was after Hades as the Dragon Emperor, and he was merely a weapon guarding the Dragon Emperor. Jill suggested that Hades marry the gun instead, but Ravi mentioned that the goddess's jealousy when in love was intense. If unstable, she could slaughter all the women on the continent. As Hades' former wife, Jill would not escape death either. The only way to defeat the goddess was for the Dragon Queen to sacrifice herself using the Sky Sword to seal the black gun. Therefore, Ravi's original mission should have been to kill Jill, but now it was protecting her, following Hades' will without his realizing how important Jill was to him. Jill asked Ravi to let her go. She planned to take the Sky Sword and confront the goddess. It was not time to give up yet. Ravi did not understand why Jill was fighting so hard, given they initially just wanted to use her. Jill coldly wished Hades and Ravi could have fully exploited her, but Hades chose to protect her instead. Jill confessed she was jealous because Hades seemed to know the goddess well. Ravi quickly explained that the goddess had troubled Hades since childhood, and not calling Jill by her name was to prevent girls from noticing and endangering her. Jill realized she was moved. Otherwise, she wouldn't be fighting so hard to save others. Hades had known since childhood that he was the reincarnation of the dragon god, but didn't believe the dragon god brought curses. All his suffering was named love by the goddess. If he became stronger and found the Dragon Queen, he could protect everyone from the goddess. Now, the area below was full of rebellious people, and the crazed goddess was mocking Hades, using a little girl who truly cared for him, proving he was a monster. Only she could love a monster. Hades also knew his brother hated him, and no one wished him to live. But Jill's words echoed in his ears. He couldn't just give up. If he, as the Dragon Emperor, died, the country would collapse and be devoured by the goddess. Ravi would do everything to save the country, but he was also nearing his limit. Hades ordered Hugo to withdraw the troops from the port, but discovered that Jill had rung the alarm bell, openly declaring war on the goddess in front of everyone, also acting to clear Hades' name. Knowing the goddess's twisted nature, Jill's challenge would undoubtedly provoke her. As expected, the goddess, embodied as the black gun, charged out. Jill confronted it with the sky sword, and when the black gun broke through defenses aiming at the civilians, Jill's barrier intercepted it. However, Jill alone couldn't withstand millions of spears, but fortunately, Hades also deployed a barrier. The people below finally saw clearly that it was Jill and the tyrant who were protecting them, realizing their true enemy was the goddess. Knowing Hades couldn't hold on much longer, and understanding the goddess's extreme pride, Jill discarded the sky sword, opting for a one-on-one battle. The goddess retracted her avatars, and during their fight, she remembered Jill was reborn. Surprised that Jill had become the Dragon Queen, Jill then snapped the black sword and threw it away. Hades collapsed from the effort of maintaining the barrier, and Jill, overusing her magic, fell toward the ground. Unexpectedly, Dia caught her, claiming she would make a great human shield, and insisted on taking her back. Disgusted, Jill felt an urge to tear his face apart, but Hades arrived just in time. Given Dia was a prince from an enemy nation, Hades couldn't publicly execute him. However, he mocked Dia, saying it was acceptable to criticize a nation's guardian goddess when she caused trouble. Then, he enclosed Dia in a magical orb and sent him off with a home run, indifferent to whether he survived the landing. Later, the Lord was arrested, and Hades proposed to Jill again. Jill knew she had feelings for Hades, but also remembered that he initially wanted to use her, so she hesitated to acknowledge her feelings, saying she wanted to separate from Hades. She was about to add that she still had feelings for him, but Hades fainted after hearing the first part. After Jill consoled him, he revived, but remained very insecure. Because Hades was publicly rejected, yet had saved the townspeople, they sympathized with him and brought many gifts, including their blessings. Jill felt this was good, as everyone in the forest knew the curse was not Hades's fault. Hades apologized to Jill later, admitting he didn't believe in prophecies or breaking curses, and regretted involving her, but he truly liked her. Jill blushed, and as he moved closer, she kissed him, then slapped him for taking advantage. After the chaos at the port ended, Hades arranged for 2 dragons to be sent from the capital, taking Jill and her 2 knights to the royal city. During the journey, they learned about each other's families. Jill's family had 7 children, and so did Hades's, with only Weasel being his full sibling. The others were half-siblings. Previously, there had been more children, but many had died due to the curse, leading to his siblings ostracizing him. Jill promised to protect him. Afterward, the dragons carried them to the capital. Jill sensed Hades's anxiety and held his hand. Just as they neared the capital, they were attacked by a magical formation. Attacking the Emperor in front of everyone seemed absurd to Jill. Both she and Hades were injured protecting each other, as the assailant was Hades's uncle, armed with a weapon capable of sealing magic. The uncle claimed the black sword he wielded was the true sky sword, and that Hades possessed a fake. He accused Hades of ascending to power through lies and declared his actions a purge of the court, effectively staging a rebellion. Hades, already rumored to be a cursed emperor, lacked support from ministers and relatives. Now, he could only retreat from the capital with Jill. Ravi had disappeared to rest due to depleted energy, and Jill's magic had not recovered. Even the Dragon Queen's ring was missing. Jill had heard about Hades's uncle before, who had rebelled in the past because Hades executed a lord, branding Hades a cruel, illegitimate emperor. Jill had hoped history would change this lifetime, yet the uncle found another reason to rebel. Jill regretted not realizing sooner, blaming herself for Hades's injuries. Hades assured her it was not her fault, but his own lack of power that had led to her injuries. The 2 knights peeked from behind a door, exasperated by their display of affection. The 4 discussed their next move. One of the 3 great marquesses was neutral, but his grandson, a former heir to the throne, had died before Hades's ascension, likely harboring resentment towards Hades. This meant they had no immediate allies. Hades reassured them not to worry. His uncle's sword had sealed their considerable magical powers, which wouldn't last long before breaking. For now, they just needed to rest and relax. They lay low for a month, spending their days gardening, which left Jill speechless. Meanwhile, the uncle rallied other nobles, showcasing the real sky sword and issuing a warrant for Hades. To Jill, it seemed they were being driven into a corner. Yet, without money, power or troops, they felt powerless. Jill, still without her magic, resolved to apply for the Dragon Knight's selection. Even without magic, her physical strength was formidable. So, Jill and Zig headed to a nearby town. Before she left, Hades spoke privately with Zig, instructing him to hand him over to his uncle if anything happened to Jill, believing it would save her life. The Dragon Knight's selection attracted many people, but it was postponed by the officials. Just then, a dragon suddenly attacked the town. Jill immediately instructed the nearby knights to evacuate the crowd, and with Zig, she picked up a weapon and managed to injure the dragon's inner thigh. Soon, a dragon knight appeared, revealing that the attack was part of the selection process. The damaged fountain was already scheduled for removal. Jill noticed the dragon had frozen in place momentarily. From a distance, Hades quietly put away his telescope. Camilla wondered why Hades, who could control dragons, didn't use one to retake the capital. Hades explained that doing so would diminish Ravi's divinity, causing the country to lose control. Therefore, forcibly controlling dragons was a last resort. Jill also met Irene, the captain of the Dragon Knights, whom she had encountered in her previous life. As the god of war, Jill had captured Irene but had not intended to kill her. However, Irene, regretful upon learning that Hades had controlled a dragon to rescue her, chose to commit suicide, feeling she had failed as a sister. This time, Jill reached out to Irene first. Jill successfully joined the Dragon Knights and now commutes to the city daily. Irene, as the captain, educates them about dragons. The color of dragon scales indicates their rank. Silver is the most noble. The closer the pupil color is to gold, the purer the bloodline. Recalling Ravi, who frolicked at home, Jill could see no nobility in him. Silver dragons represent the dragon god, and black dragons symbolize kings and queens, both rare. Thus, Irene's red dragon is the strongest by bloodline at this stage. The red dragon's attitude towards new knights depends on whether they might be recognized by dragons in the future. Zig was mocked and pushed away, and other knights failed to receive acknowledgement from the red dragon. Irene said gaining the red dragon's approval was something only senior knights could achieve, and being treated differently by it was already an honor. When it was Jill's turn, the red dragon attacked her. Jill couldn't understand why, as the Dragon Queen, she wasn't recognized by the dragon. If she couldn't subdue a dragon, she couldn't become a dragon knight. She wondered when she would be able to reclaim the capital. Upon learning that the red dragon had harmed Jill, Hades rushed to find her and asked how she wanted to deal with the red dragon, offering to cook it any way she liked. Jill couldn't see Ravi, but witnessed Hades arguing with him, declaring that Jill was his queen and his approval was enough, without needing any dragon to intervene. Jill sighed, realizing she was easily appeased. She told Hades that she would definitely graduate from the Dragon Knights and eventually conquer a black-scaled, golden-eyed dragon, because such a dragon resembled Hades the most. Hades immediately blushed and collapsed. Afterward, Jill was assigned to patrol the streets, and surprisingly, her partner was Martin, her deputy in her previous life. They were chosen for patrol because the Knights' dragons were not fond of them, effectively sidelining them. Dragons, creatures that thrive only on land protected by the dragon god, naturally favor those who guard their territory. If a dragon doesn't favor a human, it suggests that the person cannot protect the land. Martin quietly informed Jill that the nobility had not sent troops to find Hades because they were all curious whether the heirs before Hades would suddenly die on his 20th birthday. During their patrol, Prince Ted, riding a dragon, appeared and asked Jill and Martin to take him to Irene. In front of Jill, he directly questioned Irene about whose side she was on, noting that their uncle now claimed to be the new emperor and accused Hades of holding a fake sky sword. Ted didn't believe these accusations. Although his relationship with Hades was strained, both he and Irene believed that Hades was undoubtedly the reincarnation of the Dragon Emperor, though they were unhappy with his abrupt marriage decision. While they recognized Hades as the reincarnation, they couldn't openly support him due to their mothers representing different families. The uncle hesitated to act against them because of their family backing. However, their families also did not support Hades, believing their family heirs had died under Hades' curse. Irene, left as the only princess, faced little pressure. She wouldn't publicly support Hades, but wouldn't harm him either. For Ted, however, the situation was more complicated. Hearing from Irene that Jill had seemingly scared off the red dragon the day before, Ted became curious about Jill and summoned his red dragon to test her, only to find it turning away upon seeing her. Ted remembered the last time this had happened was when the red dragon saw Hades, so he grew suspicious of Jill. After avoiding him for a day, Jill returned and affectionately clung to Hades, embarrassing him. Unexpectedly, Ted tracked Jill down and emerged from the bushes, only to find the Emperor, amidst a coup, casually cooking at home. Without hesitation, Ted tried to drag Hades to find Irene. Jill had intentionally let Ted follow her, sensing he held no malice towards Hades. Regrettably, she knew that after returning to work, she would miss the meals Hades cooked. Hades exclaimed he didn't want the throne. He wanted to cook for his wife. Ted certainly disagreed, prompting Hades to declare he would make their current location the imperial capital, since, as emperor, his word was law. Frustrated, Ted twisted in anger. The emperor, love-struck and straightforward, opted to abandon his throne to cook, proving too strong a monster for anyone to conquer. In the end, Ted still brought Hades before Irene. Jill advised Ted to speak more gently, explaining that Hades is tsundere and only shows his good side to those he cares about. Ted admitted he was genuinely concerned about Hades. Irene was just relieved to see Hades safe. Hades had no intention of starting a rebellion, but Jill could not sit idly by. She planned to borrow the Dragon Knight's strength from Irene and Ted, knowing their families would not approve. So Jill and Zig quickly restrained Irene and Ted, coercively extracting military authority from them. This allowed them to help Hades without their families making things difficult. However, at that moment, a report came in that an army bearing the Black Dragon flag had set fire to Irene's territory. Hades immediately summoned a group of dragons and led everyone to the scene to extinguish the fire. Ted was surprised by the dragon's capabilities. He told Hades that he didn't blame him for his brother's death, but hoped Hades would become a better emperor. Otherwise, his brother would not rest in peace. Irene informed Hades that the neighboring kingdom's princess had offered an olive branch, suggesting that her kingdom was willing to help during the Empire's crisis in exchange for a marriage alliance with Hades. Hades declared that Jill was his only queen. Just then, Martin pushed in the princess from the neighboring kingdom, none other than Phyllis, who Jill had previously caught in a compromising situation with Dia. Hades flatly refused, especially since the princess would become a vessel for the goddess after turning 14. Phyllis claimed she had escaped without her brother's knowledge, foreseeing that she might become a vessel for the goddess in 6 years and hoping to dissolve the bond between the goddess and the dragon god before then. Phyllis offered that if Hades agreed to the engagement, she would immediately announce it publicly and her kingdom would send troops to aid him. Ted knew that this would label Hades as a traitor emperor, and even if he regained the throne, he would be seen as a puppet. Moreover, with the uncle currently in power, Phyllis's brother would never allow her to marry a powerless emperor. If Phyllis chose Hades, Dia would stop supporting Hades's rival. Hades, tired of her nonsense, was about to leave with Jill when Martin stepped forward, revealing that the recent fire had scared the other nobles into seriously searching for Hades. Jill realized they could no longer hide. Even if Hades regained his throne, the nobles would undermine him. Thus, Jill agreed to the proposal, infuriating Hades, who asked if Jill was ready to trade him for a throne. Jill didn't even look back at Hades and stated that he didn't need to accept Phyllis's marriage proposal. Since Phyllis approached under the guise of lifting the curse between the goddess and the dragon god, she could claim she was pursuing Hades on her own. Whether Hades accepted was another matter, but it gave a legitimate reason for Phyllis to aid Hades. Jill assured that she would never let Phyllis have Hades. Understanding Jill's intent, Phyllis decided to present herself as a hostage to bait Dia. Turning around, Jill found Hades had fainted at her declaration. After Phyllis left, Jill warned Hades that if she ever found out he was cheating, she would literally split him in half. Hades quickly pledged his loyalty, promising never to leave Jill, especially after she turned 14, and to continue cooking delicious meals for her at night. Jill was finally appeased and continued her work with the Knight's Order. Meanwhile, Hades busied himself in the Knight's Order kitchen. Ted couldn't understand why he was doing this. Hades explained that keeping busy would reassure Jill and prevent suspicions of infidelity. The thought of Jill being jealous made him blush. In the meantime, Irene brought news that she had made contact with siblings in the capital, confirming that all royal family members were safe. They were now ready to mobilize troops to clean up the internal chaos. Martin sought out Jill privately to inform her that Hades' brother, Weasel, was engaged to their uncle's daughter. If they betrayed them, the military campaign would fail. But Jill was already prepared for betrayal, which piqued Martin's curiosity about her thoughts. Jill told him that if he wanted to know everything, he should become her subordinate. Otherwise, he should ask no further. Martin was shocked to find Jill washing the knight's undergarments. Knowing Jill was the Dragon Queen, he asked if she wanted to complain to Hades. Jill replied that if Hades knew, he might resort to violent rule, and she didn't want to spend her time calming him down. Martin then offered to deal with the group for Jill. When Jill got home, she found Hades crying in a corner because of rumors in the Knight's Order that she and the young man named Martin were close. Hades, distraught, locked himself in his room. Zig commented that he had never seen such a love-struck emperor before. Putting herself in Hades' shoes, Jill realized she might have felt homicidal if their roles were reversed. So, she had an honest conversation with Hades about her experiences in the Knight's Order. Hades was so upset he almost stormed out with a kitchen knife. Weasel from the capital sent information about the uncle's army's routes and encampments. Irene couldn't leave her territory, which would serve as Hades' final stronghold. Hades declared his intention to go to the front line, which Ted opposed as too dangerous. Irene suggested they could go together but must not be hasty. As their sister, she hoped her brothers would return safely. Jill then set out with Hades, accompanied by her 2 knights and Martin. Although the 3 seemed an odd group, they had been Jill's subordinates in her past life. Despite their peculiar ways of interacting, they were reliable when it mattered. Hades was visibly jealous of Martin, constantly acting pettily jealous along the way. Jill had to explain to him that her closeness with Martin was just a ruse to confuse outsiders, fostering rumors of discord between the Dragon Emperor and Dragon Queen. This would support Phyllis's pursuit of Hades publicly. However, Camilla suspected Jill was hiding something. Given their critical mission, Camilla hoped Jill would be forthcoming about whether Martin could be trusted. Jill candidly revealed that Martin might not be Princess Phyllis's subordinate, but rather a follower of Dia. Yet he was not genuinely loyal to Dia. He was serving Dia to rescue his sister, who had been taken into a harem by a tyrant in the south. Martin served Dia to save his sister. This means Dia should know that Phyllis ran to seek cooperation with Hades. A betrayal could happen at any moment. Hades does not interfere much with Jill's decisions. He wants Jill to be free and is indifferent to betrayal. After all, Hades believes he will be the last one standing regardless of who betrays him. That evening, Martin discussed plans with Camilla and others, suspecting it to be a plot to lure Hades to the capital. Once Hades is captured internally, Ted and Irene, who are on Hades' side, would have no choice but to surrender. Martin noticed a change in their attitude towards him. Camilla did not hide anything and openly shared that Jill mentioned having a sister. He conveyed that his sister had written stating there was no major issue. She was not taken by a tyrant, but sent to the harem by their family to please the monarch. However, the monarch showed no interest in his sister and had recently taken a liking to a long-haired boy. Martin, lacking magic under Dia, and always at the bottom among advisors, felt he had no future there and considered shifting his loyalty to Jill. Thus, he advised at this moment for his own benefit. However, he could not understand what Jill saw in Hades. Zig told Martin that he thinks Hades is decent, willing to sacrifice himself to protect Jill. No wonder Jill cannot let go of Hades. However, Camilla is uncertain about Martin's true intentions and even considered eliminating him directly. The next day, Martin led the group towards the dragon's lair, a sacred site of the Empire, hoping to use it as a stronghold where the uncle would hesitate to attack. Before they arrived, Irene, who had come with the red dragon, surprised them. Using the Knight's Order was too conspicuous, so Jill asked Hades to wait while she went forward to gather information. Unexpectedly, Irene kidnapped Jill and confessed she might have sided with their uncle, promising to persuade him not to kill Ted, but stating she could do nothing for Hades. Ted, shocked by Irene's betrayal, urged Hades to escape. Hades was surprised by Ted's loyalty and instructed everyone to retreat while he stayed to confront the rebels. He nearly killed Irene, but Jill stopped him just in time. However, using his powers left Hades weakened and he fainted, giving their uncle the chance to capture him. The uncle then prepared to kill Jill. Contrary to their previous arrangement, the uncle had the red dragon breathe fire on Jill, thinking she was dead, and planned to execute Hades in the capital. But Jill survived because the red dragon became confused while breathing fire on her. A nearby black dragon in the dragon lair saved Jill. However, the black dragon criticized Jill for being too young and lacking the Dragon Queen's ring, blaming her for the unhatched dragon eggs in the lair. The black dragon prepared to kill Jill, but during her escape, she noticed magical energy clinging to the fragments of a dragon egg on the ground. Meanwhile, Ted and the others fled to a nearby cave. This group had narrowly escaped from a doll Hades had made for Jill, which contained terrifying power and nearly exploded the entire forest. Now, they couldn't return to seek Irene's help, and the fate of Ted's red dragon was still unknown. In the Empire, humans and dragons didn't have a master-servant pact. They could only ride dragons with the dragon's consent, otherwise, they would collapse from lack of oxygen just after taking off. During her fight with the black dragon, Jill unexpectedly discovered that her magic was sealed by the goddess. The so-called sky sword that her uncle had was actually forged from the remnants of the Black Gun, a weapon of the goddess, and used to seal the Dragon Emperor's magic. It was known that the goddess intended to harm the dragon god, and now the uncle was using the enemy's power to usurp the throne. The dragonkin turned a blind eye to this, and even blamed Jill, the only one protecting the Dragon Emperor, claiming her sealed powers made her an unfit dragon queen. It's no wonder Hades verbally claimed to be the Dragon Emperor, but seemed indifferent to the usurpation, facing such kin and relatives. Angry, Jill cut her hand with a fragment of a dragon egg, using the magic residue to punch the black dragon. She then noticed a dragon egg in the lair. The black dragon explained that since the birth of the Dragon Emperor, the black egg should have started hatching, but there had been no movement for 10 years. If it exceeded 20 years, the Dragon Emperor's heart would become nourishment for the black egg, and his emotions could cause a monster to hatch. The black dragon was irritable and dissatisfied because this black egg was her future mate, and she had been waiting alone for 300 years. Seeing the lonely black egg reminded Jill of the solitary Hades, so she approached and soothed the egg, which surprisingly awakened it. The black dragon then calmed down and apologized to Jill, who felt a bit sorry for the dragon, enduring 300 years alone. Jill then asked the black dragon to join her in rescuing Hades, and seeing the egg respond, the black dragon agreed. On the other side, Irene found Hades and believed that Jill's intervention to prevent Hades from killing her was to spare him the reputation of having killed his own sister. She was willing to die by Jill's hand, admitting she wasn't a good sister and that Hades had done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, Jill, with the black dragon and other dragons, successfully reunited with her team and had Martin draft a counterattack plan. Jill led the black dragon and her teammates in the charge, but Irene kept trying to stop her. Jill could see that Irene's sisterly affection for Hades was genuine, but she didn't understand why Irene would betray him. Just then, Ted arrived. He truly recognized Hades' potential to be the Dragon Emperor, and was also puzzled by Irene's betrayal, given her usual emphasis on family ties. The situation escalated until their uncle arrived and revealed shocking news. He found a secret letter in the former king's room, which recorded that Hades' mother had an affair with her guard after giving birth to her eldest son, Weasel. Thus, Hades' lineage was impure, yet he still became the Dragon Emperor. This suggests that the so-called divine dragon bloodline of their royal family is merely a facade. Ted believed that even so, the truth should be made public and judged by the dragon god. However, the uncle wanted to preserve the royal hierarchy and decided to eliminate Hades instead. The uncle constantly claimed he was protecting the nation, so the royal secrets must not be exposed, and he planned to kill Hades without his knowledge, believing that Hades should never have been born, and his existence cursed the royal family. If he hadn't become the Dragon Emperor, no one would suffer. At that moment, Hades broke out of his cage. Upon learning the truth, Ravi was also shocked. The uncle immediately attacked Hades, but when he saw that Hades was unharmed, he furiously called him a monster. Hades was enraged, questioning why he was labeled cursed when it was the royal family shifting the blame to him. He didn't choose to be the Dragon Emperor. It was a role that also came with the burden of protecting the nation and its people. Yet with a single claim of stabilizing the royal lineage, the uncle wanted to label him a tyrant and kill him? Now, knowing he had no real family, Hades was prepared to kill them all. Jill, seeing the danger, threw herself at him, hugging his waist and promising to have 10 children and build a happy family with him. This immediately calmed Hades down. But Jill, suggesting 10 children and even planning for their sons to marry Irene and daughters to marry Ted, so Hades could become their father-in-law, seemed like a bizarre solution. She argued that while Hades might not be related by blood to them, the concern they showed for him was genuine, and she would ensure his happiness. Hades calmed down and reactivated the Sky Sword. The uncle, desperate to kill Hades, was thwarted by Ted, who argued that Hades had now effectively adopted the royal bloodline, even if only nominally, ensuring the stability of the royal lineage. After all, only those chosen by the dragon god truly belonged to the royal family, and in some ways, Hades was more convincing than the current royals. Despite the uncle's firm belief that Hades would betray the family, this time, Irene also chose to believe in Hades. Martin arrived with the black dragon to support them. The uncle, consumed by the counterfeit Sky Sword and transformed into a monster, still insisted on killing Hades to protect his family. He then flew towards the capital, intending to destroy it, believing himself the true descendant of the dragon god. Hades instructed Jill to take the black dragon and evacuate the people while he confronted his mutated uncle alone, acknowledging his intent to protect his family, but recognizing that he was now just a destructive monster. Hades ultimately struck him down with a single blow. However, the fallen fake Sky Sword was then picked up by a small hand. A month later, both Jill and Hades still hadn't recovered their magic, and they hadn't found the counterfeit Sky Sword that sealed their powers. Ted's attitude towards Hades remained unchanged. He didn't find Hades frightening at all. Faced with such an attitude, Hades honestly acknowledged Ted as his brother. Hades, needing to participate in a parade upon returning to his throne, unexpectedly found out that he had missed Jill's birthday due to his capture. He was so upset that he declared he might as well not be the emperor, criticizing himself as useless for forgetting his wife's birthday. Jill soothed him, promising a big celebration after the parade, which cheered him up. Jill learned that Martin was about to escort Phyllis back to her kingdom. She tricked Ravi into taking her to the port under the pretense of meeting Sophia, but actually to meet Phyllis. Jill suspected that Phyllis might be the mastermind behind the counterfeit Sky Sword, since the seals on her and Hades' magic hadn't been lifted. Indeed, Phyllis confessed to being behind it, revealing that the sword was forged from the remnants of the black gun she had retrieved. She explained that Hades' uncle had always been wary of her, refusing to teach her how to use the fake Sky Sword, and even wanting to break into the capital to kill her as a monster, though he was mistakenly killed by Hades. Now Phyllis had become a vessel for the goddess, and knowing about Jill's reincarnation, smugly told Jill that she would eventually win over the Dragon Emperor, and that Jill would abandon Hades just as she had abandoned Dia when he needed her most. At the moment the goddess attacked Jill, Ravi transported her back to the palace. Meanwhile, Hades publicly disclosed the royal family's true origins and declared his acceptance of the royal lineage. He then shockingly announced that he was married to Jill, who was only 11 years old. This absurd revelation hinted at the chaos within the royal family and the questionable nature of their governance and morals, raising concerns about how the narrative was being handled, especially regarding revenge against villainous acts and the serious themes introduced with an almost frivolous treatment.